Hey guys, Aaron Zeller here of the Zeller Writing Company and inkonhand.com. Some of you might have noticed that we recently added the brand TWSBI to the store, and while I do plan to review all of the products that we have in, I noticed there aren't that many reviews out of their notebooks which were just released. So that's what I want to talk about today. I have all of our notebooks in, I've had a chance to play around with them, and now I want to let you know what I found out. So here they are, the TWSBI notebooks. They come in 3 different sizes. As you can see here, small, which is 3.75 by 5.5 inches. The medium is the one we're going to be looking at today, and it is 5.25 by 8.25 inches. And then the large here is 7.5 inches by 9.8 inches. There isn't any difference in page count or anything between them. It's just size. So I'm going to toss these to the side because they're really not going to affect anything whether we look at those or not. There are 3 different rulings to these notebooks. There's a blank, there's lined, and then today we're going to look at the grid one that I have here. The paper is the same in all 3 rulings. It's just whether you want it blank, lined, or grid. The ruling dimensions are 5 millimeters is the size, and I don't know if you could see it on here. I can zoom in, but the lines are not actually lines. They are little dots. Yeah, you can't really see it on there. I'll put a photo in the actual blog post, but they're not actually lines. These are it's a really faint grid, same as the line is the same way, and they're a bunch of little micro dots. They aren't solid lines, so they're really unobtrusive when writing. The cover to these is it's a leatherette cover. It's not. I mean, I'm pretty sure it's not actual leather. It feels more like a fake leather, but if I'm wrong, let me know. It has a really nice soft texture to it though. It's imprinted with the TWSBI logo on the front there, on the front middle right side, and then on the bottom as well on the back. There is the stretch elastic journal enclosure just to keep it closed when you're not using it. There is the red ribbon page marker, which is nice to have. I really like the vibrancy of this. It really fits their brand. It's pretty much, it matches their pen. I'll grab one of the pens really quick. The red of the strap matches the red in their logo pretty well. It's more of a scarlet, I guess, in the actual logo. There's more of a solid red, but they're pretty darn close, and I think it's a good reflection of the overall colors and design of how the brand has been going. There's a pocket in the back, which is really cool because normally the pocket you have, it's a pleated pocket like a lot of notebooks have, but normally it's a piece of paper right here. But this is actual a red cloth, which is nice. It doesn't really add anything to notebook except kind of make it feel a little bit higher quality than what you're normally used to. There are 240 pages in each of these notebooks. That's just 120 sheets. The small ones are perforated pages. The medium and large are not. And the paper weight itself, TWSBI hasn't really come out and said what the exact paper weight is, but it's somewhere between 70 and 80 grams per square meter. So it's not a super heavyweight paper, but it's also not onion skin or anything really thin like that. Like I said, the ruling is 5 millimeter. The paper itself is about 0.1 millimeters thick, and then it's a white paper. It's right between white and ivory. It's definitely more on the white side though. On first glance you're going to notice it's white. When you really stare, maybe it's just the lighting in here, but it's pretty much white, you could call it that. We can actually look at the actual paper test that I performed. It also has, so it goes cover and then kind of a nice stock board, and then the first sheet, it's kind of glued to the stock page a little bit. If you actually look, all the other pages are just right in the center. This page right after the piece of stock is glued a little bit inward, so I don't really like how it kind of, if you fold it in, it doesn't quite match up with the edge like I like, but that's not a big deal. It's just an extra page. Also, now we can just start looking at that, and when I remember what I was going to say, I will come back to it. I just did some general writing here, and just to see how it would perform, and it works pretty well. You can see there's a splotch right here, only because I did not let this dry before closing the page. I used some J or Bond Pearl Noir, and it's when you look at the actual dry time, It's about 30 seconds. I'll get to that later, but that's why there's some smear here. We'll actually go over the paper test itself. And what I did here was use 5 different pens, 5 different inks, 5 different nibs, and to see how they all performed on this paper. What I did is basically wrote the pen, wrote the nib size, wrote the ink that I used, and then did some cross-hatching, some figure 8 motions, and then drew with a solid square. And then I judged it on a scale of 0 to 3 as far as how much show-through, bleed-through, and feathering there is on this paper. Now, 0 would be the perfect score. So the lower the score, the better. Scaled from 0 to 3. So the lower you go, the better it's going to be. 0 means none, 3 means there's a lot, which is not good. So you can just go line by line here. The fine on the TWSBI 580 with the Jayerbon Blue Myosotis. I am not good at pronunciation of these French names, so if I'm butchering it, I'm expecting to butcher it, so I apologize for that. It's not really a matter of if I'm butchering it, it's just how much. There is a little bit of show-through on the back. You can tell there is a little show-through on all of these, and I think that's more so because of how thick, how thin the paper is actually, that you're going to get show-through. But there is a little bit of bleed-through on the heavier area where there is the solid square. Yeah, and that looks about it for the overall. So I did put a 1 for show-through, 1 for bleed-through, because it's not a lot, and it's only where it's really thick writing, and you're really laying it down pretty thick. Medium Pelikan M200 with the Edelstein Jade. There actually was no bleed-through, just a little show-through, and no feathering. There was no feathering with any of these inks, which is fantastic. The dry time is a little longer, so that means the paper is a little less absorbent, as normally like copy paper or moleskin paper or anything like that. So that's really good for feathering and bleed through as well. The Broad Lamy Studio with the Jayerbon Blue Ocean ink, their 1670 anniversary. It's a darker ink. There is quite a bit more show through. There is some more bleed through with this as well in the heavier area. So I did get a 2 for show through because there is a little more, 1 for bleed through, and again 0 for feathering. And then I did a 1.1 millimeter on the Lamy Vista with a Jayerbon Eclat de Saphir. And no bleed through. I expected there to be a little bit more bleed through because that is a wetter writing pen, but there really wasn't anything for this, just show through. So 1 show through, 0 bleed through, 0 feathering. And then I brought out my extremely wet writing Noodler's Ahab with some Edelstein Tourmaline. I'm still not sure how to pronounce all these names. But there was a little bit of bleed through there, and on the cross hatching as well. So the flex nib definitely did bleed through the most out of all of these, and that's to be expected. I mean, it's a fine point on there to begin with, so it's going to dig a little deeper into the page, and then it's also putting down a lot more ink. So that did get a 2 on show through, 1 for bleed through. There was just a little bit, nothing too insane, no bleeding onto the next page either. So we just got a 1 for bleed through there. So then what I do at that is I average each column, write it down here. So there's a 1.6 average for show through, 0.6 average for bleed through, and then 0 feathering. No feathering at all showed up. And then I average those, and it's a 0.73 is the final score. And like I said, lower is better. So anything less than a 1, I would say, is pretty fountain pen friendly. Yeah, so it worked out pretty well. There is show through and bleed through, of course, like you saw. But it is really only on the extreme writing areas where there's a lot of overlap or anything like that, like on the cross hatch. And with the fine point, we were digging in a little bit more, and it's a wetter writing pen. So for your average writing, just general writing, I mean, this was how I wrote previously on the first page. And this was with the Lamy Studio Broad Nib with the Blue Ocean Jayerbon 1670 ink. Just some show through, not really any bleed through. Looks like there was, nope, that's not bleed through there either. That's just more smear residue from the black right there. Yeah, so there's really not much bleed through at all. So you can write, so if you want to, you could probably write on the front to back, but because of the show through, it might be a little distracting. But personally, I don't ever write really on the back of the pages that I've already written on in the notebook and stuff, just because it just gets harder to read it because there is going to be show through. With that, so then we'll actually go to the next page. Now on the next page, I did the dry test. For this, I pretty much wrote with the Lamy Studio broad seal nib. I try to get pretty much as much ink on here as possible to really see how it would interact in the most strenuous environment for it. Like I did, I pretty much just drew how long I was going to wait, and then I did 3 lines, and then waited that duration of time, smeared it with my finger. And as you can see, 1 second, even at 20 seconds, there's a little, 30 seconds, a little tiny bit, but after 30 seconds, it was done. So if you have a finer nib or a drier ink or something like that, your dry time is going to be a little quicker. But I found it to be between 20 and 30 seconds for a general broad nib standard ink. After that, I did the soak test, which basically what I do is I put a drop of ink on the paper and I see how long it takes to dry and how many pages it bleeds through. And this is where I was surprised. I expected to have quite a bit more bleed through because with these, I mean, just having the wetter writing ink, wetter writing pen, I had some bleed through. And so I expected it to bleed through quite a few pages actually because it is thinner, but it is a fairly non-absorbent paper. It is fairly water resistant. That's why there's such a long dry time. So that's why I was kind of surprised with the results where it only bled through the page that I put the drop on. There's nothing on the next page. I can look in really close and I don't see anything on that page at all. Yeah, so I would say there's just the one page and it works pretty well. You're not going to, if you put a big splotch of ink, you're not going to have to worry about tearing out a bunch of pages or anything like that. It should be just a single page and you should be good to go. Then I did a swab test with the same Blue Ocean ink. What I basically do with that is I just take a cotton swab or a Q-tip, whatever you want to call it, and I just do a pass with it, let it dry, and then I pretty much just keep doing that, make a pass, let it dry until it bleeds through. And after 4 swabs, it finally started to bleed through. After 5, I probably would have got a full line here, and it probably would have shown on the next page. But after 4 swabs is when it finally started to bleed through, so that's pretty good. Yeah, like overall, and then I just did a general review right here of what I thought after the test. And while there is some show through with almost all of the nib, pen, and ink colors and everything like that, bleed through only happened on the really wet areas where there was quite a bit of cover with the ink. Meaning that for regular, like average writing, anything pretty much like this, you're not going to have to worry about it. It's going to be pretty good. It's going to be pretty fountain pen friendly without much, if any, bleed through when you're doing that. And overall, this is a fountain pen friendly paper, and it provides a pretty good writing experience. It's fairly smooth, not as smooth as Clairefontaine Triomphe or anything like that. There is just a little bit of feedback, but I actually prefer that. While Clairefontaine, I really like that paper for how fountain pen friendly it is. I mean, you can do anything you want with a fountain pen on it, and it's not really going to hurt it at all. But it's too smooth. I'm not a really big fan of that, especially as being left-handed. It takes way too long to dry. So I really like how this one, I don't have to worry about it bleeding through the next page. I can just pretty much write, put a piece of blotting paper over it, flip the page to make sure it doesn't splotch onto the back of the previous page, and I can continue on without really worry. So this is definitely a very good notebook. I really like it for the price. It's also a really good deal. When you got 240 pages here of fountain pen friendly paper, and the small one, the small notebook is $10.99, and it's about A6 or so in size. And with that, if you compare it to the cost of like 3 field notes notebooks, or even like a Moleskine, I'm pretty sure is more expensive in the same size for not fountain pen friendly paper, for not extremely fountain pen friendly paper. And field notes, you get 48 pages, so 24 sheets per notebook. So you get 72 sheets total for $10. You get about over 1.5, almost twice as many pages for just an extra $1, basically, with a leatherette cover, pocket in the back, journal marker. And then you go up, it's only $2 more for the larger book. It is a really good deal. It looks great, it feels great, it feels really high quality. I mean, I'm really surprised because a Moleskine of this size, and it's a similar cover as you're going to find on like the soft cover Moleskines, or Moleskine, however you want to pronounce it. is like $17 or $18. I think I can't remember what even I have it available for right now, but it is just I really like these. This is definitely going to become a favorite of mine, and I encourage you, even just grab one and try it out. Even if you don't want to buy one, find a friend who's bought one and try it out to see if you like it first. But overall, I really enjoy it. Yeah, so I think that is about it on these. So I think that I covered these notebooks pretty well, but if you have any questions about them or comments on how I can improve my reviews for the future to make sure that you get the information that you're looking for, feel free to let me know in the comments below, or you can always send me an email at ajzeller@zellerwritingcompany.com. Thanks, see you later.